Well, Chris Doyle is a commentator on Middle Eastern affairs. He's also the director of the Council for Arab-British Understanding. And Chris, you're joining us from Kent. It's good to have you on the program. So how important is this for you, the Iranian shooting down of an American jet? Do you look at this as simply something that's to be expected after weeks of fighting, or a more meaningful signal about how the battle is going?
I think if you went back 5 weeks ago and you spoke to President Trump and said you will be getting into a situation where US planes have been downed and you will be having to consider putting boots on the ground, you would have been laughed out of the Oval Office, because the presumption and all the hubris and the machismo was this was going to be a walkover. It was going to be easy. We remember that Donald Trump said the war was won on day one. But instead, what we are seeing is that, yes, of course, the United States military and Israel is dominating, but it's not having things all its own way. And there isn't uncontested airspace. They don't have freedom of passage for shipping through the Hormuz. But worse, it doesn't look as if they've got a means to reverse this, that they are unsure what to do. President Trump, frankly, comes across as both confused and desperate. Confused as to what to do, why he's in this state, what to order next, but desperate as well, because his approval ratings are plummeting, the costs of this war are rising, and he must know that this is damaging his presidency. This could be the legacy for his second term.
5 weeks into this conflict, the parameters of the war are pretty much set. The U.S. and Israel are bombing Iran at will, the downing of the F-15 notwithstanding. And Iran has a vice grip on who can get their energy through the Strait of Hormuz, right? So now that we know the parameters and who has what leverage, where does that take us?
Well, I think we're looking at a situation that this goes on. It's attritional. It's hard to see where this breaks. We understand that Iran has rejected direct talks with the United States for all sorts of reasons. It doesn't believe that the Americans are prepared to go along with some of its core demands. So I think while there's some agreement on certain aspects, there's still huge gaps. So what is to stop Iran from continuing to target Gulf states, to keep the Strait of Hormuz closed? It doesn't look as if US and Israel are able to reverse that. On the other hand, Iran will still be pummeled, bombarded daily by US and Israeli forces, and the world will have to suffer the consequences economically in terms of ongoing security. So we're not quite in a stalemate, but it's sort of feeling like it, that both sides are now stuck in the mud. They don't have an exit ramp, and it's really hard for others on the outside to give them a lifeline.
Chris, the U.S. believed going into this war that they could bomb Iran, if not into submission, at least changing its behavior. Is that still even a remote possibility? I understand it hasn't happened, and we've seen no sign of that happening over the last 5 weeks. But at the same time, as we said, U.S. and Israel continue to degrade Iran's military capabilities. So is there a chance that at some point Iran says, or at least thinks on their end, we need to end this?
Of course there is. The bombing has been remorseless, and it's hard to get an exact assessment of that battleground damage, of what it's done to the Iranian economy and leadership, the public as well, how ordinary Iranians are surviving. So you could get into a situation of some form of regime collapse. But we're not seeing it. We're not seeing those sort of telltale signs of defections and other signatures of a regime in real chaos. What I don't think we're going to be seeing, though, is regime change. And what I mean by that is a transition from the authorities, the state that we have now, to some US-Israeli imposed new leadership. It's far more likely to be fragmentation and collapse than that. So that doesn't also look, outside of negotiations, a really positive scenario, one that others might be content with. It's going to be degrees of losing, degrees of destruction, and for what achievement?
Chris Doyle of the Council for Arab-British Understanding, thank you very much for joining us.
Thank you.